So you have stocks, savings, or property. Where do you allocate your funds? By the end of this video, we would have answered that question and I would have shown you the single most important criteria to guide you in deciding how to answer that question, and you'll be able to make that decision yourself. Let's get into it. A couple of years ago, a friend of mine asked for my opinion on what I thought was the best way to invest some money. She had just received a bonus and she wanted to allocate it properly. At the time, I was all gung-ho about ETFs. That was where I was putting my money. So I told her, yeah, this is how I'm investing my money. Basically, ETF for the S&P 500. I think that's the safest and easiest way to invest, and that's what I'm doing. So she followed my lead and invested her money in the S&P 500. Now, can you guess what the outcome was and why it was a bad idea? Because my goals were different from her goals. She intended to use that money a couple of months down the road. Unfortunately, that year, the US stock market performed quite poorly. And as at the time she was withdrawing the cash, because she did need the cash later on in the year, she actually ended up making a loss. You would wonder, stock market, S&P 500 has been growing year on year for the past how many years? Yes. But she needed the money at a time when the market was actually down. And she had to pull the money at that time. What's the moral of the story? Well, there are two lessons you can learn from that story. One is that I'm not a financial advisor, and if you need financial advice, like I always say, consult the services of a professional. But two, and more importantly, the moral of the story, and the reason for this entire video, is that the criteria for deciding where to invest your money is not how good the investment is, but how long your investment time frame is. How long do you have for that money to sit without you touching it? That's the most important thing. Because even a fantastic investment like the S&P 500 has been for the past couple of years can be a bad option for you if you need your money in 3 months and the market happens to dip in those 3 months. But before we go on, who am I and why did my friend come to me in the first place? Why did she think it was a good idea to ask me what I was doing with my own money? Let me introduce myself. My name is Modupe. I live and work in the UK. I'm a regular schmegler guy, but what I do have is over 15 years of experience investing as a regular employee, both in Nigeria and in the UK. Like most people watching this video, I'm someone who is particular about where I put my money and is intent on making sure that my money works for me. So I like to share from what I've learned in the last 15 years. I believe it will be helpful to you. But as always, I'll put this disclaimer out there. I'm not a professional financial advisor. Nothing in this video should be taken as financial advice. If you do need financial advice, consult the services of a professional. Back to the topic of this video. Like I mentioned earlier, the most important criteria for deciding where to put your money is what's your investment time frame. It's more important than the quality of the investment or how much money you have or what the returns are. The most important thing is how long you have before you would require those funds back. Because even if an investment is fantastic, it might have its ups and downs. And you need to decide if it's a short-term investment, a medium-term investment, or a long-term investment before you actually make any move. Now, personally, I consider anything that is less than 3 years to be a short-term investment, because you could have a market downturn, you could have a depression or a recession that lasts up to 2 years or 3 years. The stock market could plummet. If you look at what happened in 2008, the US stock market crashed and some businesses did not recover for up to 2 to 3 years. Some industries didn't recover for quite a while. So any funds that you're going to need in less than 3 years, I would consider that to be short-term. Anything that you cannot leave for more than 3 years. Most people would say a year, right? So fine. If you're going to need that money in less than a year, it's definitely short term. If you're going to need it in less than 3 years, it's still short term in my books. If it's something that you're not going to need for at least another 3 to 10 years ideally, then I would consider that medium term. If you can ignore it for at least 10 years, I would consider that to be medium term. But if it's something that you're not even going to think about for over 10 years, you can leave it there for 10, 15, 20 years, that's a long-term investment. All right. I'll give you examples of the kind of things that I invest in for short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Before we go on, I'd like to ask a question. What's your own current investment time horizon? Please leave the answer in the comments below. And please make sure you watch this video to the very end, because I have some bonus tips and resources to share then. So where do I invest my own short-term funds, like money that I'm going to need in the next 3 to 6 months, money that I'll need in a year? This is what most people would refer to as their emergency fund, your short-term savings that if something comes up, you might need to dip into that quickly. I personally look for high interest savings accounts, and there are lots of them, especially here in the UK. I will share how you can find the best high interest savings accounts at the end of the video. So that's my own number one option. An alternative to that could be a cash ISA, which is basically a high yield savings account just with a bit of other rules. So what's the advantage of high yield savings accounts? Typically, your principal is safe. That's actually the number one thing, the number one criteria that I look for short-term investments. I want to make sure my principal is safe, right? Because I'm not so worried about inflation. If it's something that is going to be short-term, if it's money that I'm going to need in another 6 months to 12 months, inflation is not my biggest risk there. Unless you're in a place like Nigeria where inflation is double digits. But in a place like UK where inflation is lower single digits most of the time, you probably won't even get the full 4% in 6 months. What I would be more concerned about for a short-term investment in UK is that the cash itself remains secure, that the principal money that I'm putting into that investment remains secure. And for that, you want a savings account. Basically, you want a high yield. I personally wouldn't go for the ones that have restrictions in terms of when you can withdraw it, because you may need that money urgently for some unexpected expense. Typically, it's your emergency funds that you keep this way, right? So what I do is I look for the best rates I can get, but I still make sure it's something that is flexible and accessible at all times. And like I said, I'll let you know how you can find those in a bit. Now, for the second bucket of investments, if it's something that is medium term, that I probably won't need to touch that money for ideally another 10 years, or let's say 5 to 10 years. That would be my stocks and shares. So typically what I do for that is I have an ISA. If you don't know what an ISA is, that's an investment savings account. There are different types of ISAs. There's cash ISA, there's stocks and shares ISA, there's what is called lifetime ISA, and so on and so forth. What I usually do is I get a stocks and shares ISA and I invest my medium-term investments in there. Usually you get a lot of growth, but you need to be patient because it's not something you want to liquidate in a hurry or in an emergency. It's something that you want to allow to sit. You want to let those funds sit and grow and compound over time. So typically I use stocks and shares for such investments. All right. Now there are other things you could do. Some employers have what you call a save as you earn scheme, where you can actually invest in shares of that company if it's a listed company, and they take a small deduction from your salary every month, and then within 3 to 5 years you can get that money back. You either get the shares or you get your cash back. You can actually find those details on gov.uk website. It's not all the employers that offer this, but if your employer does, you can also take advantage of that. It's also a good medium investment in my own opinion. I do it with my own employer. Now, some people would say, oh, you're increasing the risk because you currently work with an employer, so you're compounding your risk by also having assets with the employer that you work with. So if the company is dissolved, you're not only losing your source of employment, you're also losing investment as well. In my own view, I think it's a risk that you need to be aware of and decide if you want to take it or not. But you don't have to, honestly. You have your stocks and shares as an option that I would typically go for when it comes to medium-term investments. Now, another option you could consider is a lifetime ISA. I'm not going to explain how that works here, but basically it's an ISA that allows you to invest up to £4,000 a year in a tax-free account. And the sweet part of it is the government gives you 25% of whatever you contribute into that account. So if you put in the full £4,000, they add £8,000 on top. So by the end of the year, you have £5,000 each year. right? So each year you can add £4,000. The government adds 1,000 on top of that. Assume you do that for 5 years. That means you would have £25,000 in that account, which you could say is not a lot of money. But then again, that money is also being invested. If you're able to do that for, let's say, 10 years, right, you end up with £50,000 in that account. You'd have only contributed £40,000. You would have an extra £10,000 bonus from the government, and that is not including the fact that you also get the normal growth. So if the LISA, if they invest it in stocks and shares over that 10-year period, you also get the normal growth from your investments in the stock market during that period of time. Of course, if it sounds too good to be true, there's usually a catch. So there are a few conditions to having an ISA. The first one is you have to be under the age of 40 to even be able to own one, right? So if you're over 40, sorry, too late. You can open a lifetime ISA. Two, the other condition attached to it that's even more important is the fact that that money can only be withdrawn either for you to use as a down payment for property in the UK, or once you are at the age of, let's check that age now. You can only do that up till the age of 50, right? So you have to get in before 40, and you can only do it up till you're at the age of 50. So let's assume you're 35 today and you open a lifetime ISA. That means you have 15 years to invest in that account. You put in your £4,000 a year, the government adds £1,000 on top of that. Over that 15-year period, you'd have invested £60,000 and the government would have added 25% to that. So basically you would have £75,000 in that account over a 15-year period. And then you would also have whatever returns come from investing that cash every year. So let's say you open it with a LISA provider, say Moneybox, and they invest it in stuff for you. You're not going to touch it. Sorry, that's the other criteria I need to let you know. You can't touch that money unless either you want to withdraw it and use it as a down payment for property, or you're at the age of 60. So let's assume you invest all the way through till you're 50. You end up with about £75,000 invested. You withdraw that £75,000 at the age of 50 and use it to buy property, or you can withdraw it earlier and use it to buy property, or you can leave it. You can leave it even after you're 50 and you can no longer contribute to it. It will continue to compound until you're 60, and then you can now take that cash and use it for anything you want. You don't have to use it for property once you're 60 years old. But the other downside to it is if you do decide to withdraw that cash, let's say you invest from 35 to 40 and you've done 5 years, you can only buy property within certain restrictions. So there's a general push by the public to change those conditions. But at the moment, you can only buy property that is priced below just £450,000. So if you're in London, that's not a lot. There are not a lot of properties in central London that are under £500,000. You have to either go to the outskirts, so you end up buying a flat somewhere. But if you actually want to buy a house, you probably have to move a bit towards the outskirts of London, or you go outside London. You don't have to buy in London. You can go to, there's Birmingham. Birmingham is not too far from London, and you're going to have the HS2 train coming on board sometime in the near future, right? So you could do that. That's an option for you. That's it with a lifetime ISA. But if you're like me and you'd like to just keep it simple, do your stocks and shares ISA and you're good. Now, in terms of long-term investments, this is where we start talking about things like pensions or property, if you're a property kind of person. I put property here, but I'm not that much of a property person, and I'll explain why in other videos. One, I haven't invested in property in the UK. I have in Nigeria, but not in the UK. I'm not making any money from it. It's just there. I see it almost as a store of value as opposed to something you invest in for growth. Now, I can put money in the stock market, I can put money in my pensions, and I expect it to grow over time. Historically, the last 100 years, stocks and shares have grown globally at an average rate of, let's say, 7%. You can't say the same for property. But pensions are a great long-term investment. Now, I'm sure you're probably wondering, why didn't I classify a lifetime ISA, since they call it lifetime, as a long-term investment, since you can invest in it up to the age of 50? Most people that do lifetime ISAs actually expect to withdraw that cash and invest it into property. So it kind of sits in two. Actually, your lifetime ISA and your stocks and shares ISA could also count as long-term investments. Why? Because some people could decide to actually do that lifetime ISA and not touch it till they're 60. So imagine someone opens a lifetime ISA at the age of 30 and invests consistently the full 4,000 allowed every year, meaning they get an extra 1,000 from the government for the next 20 years till they're 50, which is the limit. So you have 20 years multiplied by 4,000, that's 80,000 pounds that they've invested. The government adds 25% extra to that. So now they have 100,000 pounds invested, and this is growing and compounding year on year. So by the age of 50, they have roughly 100,000 pounds invested in that account, and they choose to leave it because the only way they can withdraw that cash before 60 is if they want to use it to buy property. But they decide not to touch it and they leave it in there. So that money compounds again for another 10 years. So you have 100,000 pounds invested, compounding year on year for another 10 years. So that's 30 years of some solid investment. And then they can pull that cash at the age of 60 and go buy a house somewhere or go retire in some island somewhere. So you could also consider a lifetime ISA to be a long-term investment. And you could also do the same for your stocks and shares. The reason I don't consider stocks and shares is because you don't have that restriction that you have with a LISA or a pension. Pensions you can't withdraw until you retire. Lifetime ISA you can't cash it out unless you are using it to buy property. If you can't cash it out until you're 60. It locks you into a long-term period. So those two lock you in. Stocks and shares, you can actually decide, okay, it's 10 years, I've done enough of this, I want to take my money now. So it doesn't lock you in, although if you're disciplined or you have that goal of locking your money down or having that money invested for a long period of time, you can actually leave the money in there. I have some shares I bought about 15 years ago and they're still doing great today. I started investing in Zenith Bank around 2016 and I'm not planning to touch it anytime soon. So you could still decide to have long-term investments in stocks and shares. It's totally an option. But here, typically I would put pensions and lifetime ISA if you choose not to withdraw it. And I would also put property. The reason I put property here is because most people that invest in property will tell you if you're going to sell in less than 3 years, it's almost pointless because whatever gains you think you made would have been erased either from maintenance or purely fees, transaction fees, taxes that you'd have paid the government or whatever. There's so many costs that you would factor into that investment that would have been wiped out if you only keep it for 3 years. But if you keep it for longer, then you have a higher chance of recouping those costs from the growth that you have experienced with that property. But like I said, I'm not a property person. This is where we now go to our sponsors. And guess what? This video is sponsored by me. So if you're enjoying the video so far, please click the like button, leave a comment. It really helps the channel when you do these things, when you interact with the video and don't just watch it and go. That's the only fee I'm asking for. Thank you. Now, I promised that I would give you some bonus tips. And what's my number one bonus tip for you? My number one bonus tip for anyone that watches any of my videos is check the description. Check the YouTube description because I usually stack it with links to videos, reference materials, things I talk about in the video. I always put links to all those things in the description, so please check the description. And I've talked about ISAs and LISAs and stocks and shares today. In the description you will see the links to the stocks and shares ISA providers that I use, as well as links to the website that I usually check when I want to find the best options for high yield savings accounts. So you will see those links in the description. I'll also leave links to where you can find information about employee share schemes. So even if your employer doesn't have it, you could actually hint to HR that is something they could do. It's a nice incentive for employees and it helps. They are more invested in the success of the company. So it's a win-win for everyone. And I don't personally use ELISA, so I can't share any ELISA that I use, but what I'll do instead is I'll leave a link to an existing video from Damien Talks Money. He made a video on ELISAs last year, and I'll leave a link to that if you can want to go watch it and get some more information. I think the video was pretty good. And that's it. I've been meaning to do this video for a while, and I'm glad I finally did it. Now, comments. At FLC Mosalin commented on my last video. He said, "Such an inspiring story. It's so helpful to hear about your investing journey and the lessons you've learned along the way. I love how honest you were about what you wish you knew sooner. It's a reminder that investing is a marathon, not a sprint. Definitely taking some of these tips with me as I start my own journey. Thanks for sharing your experience." And thank you to FLC Marceline. I'm happy you're happy. I'm happy you found the video helpful. I'll link it here. I'm always happy to share what I've learned and what I'm learning, because I know how difficult it was for me when I just moved here. I moved here during the pandemic. I didn't have a lot of people to talk to. I didn't know how to go about investing, and despite the fact that I had years of experience investing back home in Nigeria, it was still a bit of a hurdle for me. It took me almost a year before I actually started investing. I opened an investment account, but I was afraid to put money in there. Why? Because first I didn't know the companies. I was first of all trying to do analysis about the companies. Then I learned about ETFs, which wasn't something I used to do in Nigeria. And then I wasn't sure about the whole tax rules, what's and etc. How do I invest and make sure it was all foreign for me. And when I learned what to do and how to go about it, I started to share with some of my colleagues and friends here as well. So I'm always happy to share the information I've learned. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I will either answer them immediately in the comments or read the answer in a subsequent video, or do both. Just do both. Thank you for watching the video to the end. If you found the video helpful, leave a comment below and tell me what exactly you found helpful in the video and what action you will be taking from having watched this video. 2. Check the video description. Like I said, there are a wealth of resources in there. The things that I share with my friends that I've left in the video description. Some of them are affiliate links though, so you will also be helping the channel by clicking on them. And then 3, please share this video with someone else. Share it with another person that you think will find it helpful. Alright, until my next video, I'm trying to be consistent and make more videos this year. The more response I get from you guys, even with 35 people, if it's 35 people that are subscribed that continue to prompt me and ask questions and interact, I would rather have 35 people that are interacting with my videos than 1,000 people that don't interact, don't put questions, don't put anything. So please leave a comment below. Tell me what you're gonna do after watching this video. Click on the links in the description and share the video with a friend. Until my next video, keep the gist flowing and let's get our money growing. See you soon.